जैसे बस्थाना हेरि बोहामी प्राणाय भकता संगे जैसा बस्ताना हेरि बोआमी प्राणाय भकत संगे मृदंग भाद्या सुनुते मन अवसर सदा जाचे मृदंग भाद्या सुनिते मन अवसर साधा जाचे गौरविहिता कीर्तन सुनी आनंद हृदय नाचे गौरविहिता कीर्तन सुनी आनंद हृदय नाचे जोगल मूर्ति देखिया मोरा परमानंद होया जोगल मूर्ति देखिया मोरा परमानंद होया प्रसाद सेवा कोरिते होया सकल प्रापंच जाया प्रसाद सेवा कोरिते होया सकल प्रापंच जाया यदि न गृहे भजन धेगी गृहते गोलोक बाया यदि न गृहे भजन धेगी गृहते गोलोक बाया चरण सिद्धू देखिया गंगा सुख न सीमा पाया चरण सिद्धू देखिया गंगा सुख न सीमा पाया तुलसी देखी जुराया प्राण माधव तो सनि जानी तुलसी देखी जुराया प्राण माधव तो सनि जानी गौरप्रिया शाकसेवने जीवन सार्थकमानि गौरप्रिया शाकसेवने जीवन सार्थकमानि भक्ति विनोद कृष्ण भजने अनुकूल पाया जाहा भक्ति विनोद कृष्ण भजने अनुकूल पाया जाहा प्रतिदिवसे परम सुखे स्वीकार को रोहिता प्रतिदिवसे परम सुखे स्वीकार को रोहिता शुद्ध भगत चरण रेणु भजन अनुकूला Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजक आचार्य अष्टोत्तर शत श्रीमती डिवाइन ग्रेस एसी भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी श्रील प्रभुपाद की ISKCON and BBT founder आचार्य इस डिवाइन ग्रेस एसी भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजक आचार्य अष्टोत्तर शत श्रीमती डिवाइन ग्रेस भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोस्वामी महाराज श्रील प्रभुपाद की, अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। नामाचार्य श्रील हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से को श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद की, श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड गिरि गोवर्धन की, वृंदावन धाम की जय, मथुरा धाम की जय, नवदीप धाम की जय, मायापुर धाम की जय, पुरुषोत्तम क्षेत्र जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय, भक्ति देवी की जय, तुलसी महारानी की जय, गंगा माई की जय, यमुना माई की जय, ट्रांसेंडेंटल बुक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन की जय। ऑल ग्लोरीज टू असम्बलिटीज, ऑल ग्लोरीज टू असम्बलिटीज, ऑल ग्लोरीज टू श्री गुरु एंड गौरंग, ऑल ग्लोरीज टू श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय, ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय, ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्यं नरं चैव नरोत्तमं, देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जायामुदीरये। नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया, भगवती उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी। कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकी नंदनाय च नंदगोपाकुमाराय गोविंदाय नमो नमः। श्री श्री राधा मदन मोहन की जय, जगन्नाथ बलदेव सुभद्रा माई की जय, गौर निताय की जय। ओम अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरुं श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरुं वैष्णवांश श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगण रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादान् सहगणा ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितंश्च। मों विष्णुपदाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी निति नामनि नमस्ते सारस्वती देवी गौरवाणी प्रचारिणी निर्विशेषा शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणी। नमो महावदन्याय कृष्ण प्रेम प्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्ण चैतन्य नामने गौरतिषे नमः। हे कृष्णा करुणा सिंधो दीनबंधो जगत्पते गोपेशा गोपिका कांता राधा कांता नमोस्तुते। तप्त कांचन गौरंगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. Welcome to all for the today Ekadashi Lilamrita reading. Before reading, I seek blessings of Anandamayu, who is a living example in front of us, and we are discussing one more Bhagavata. This is book Bhagavata and living Bhagavata. So we have first generation Bhagavata also in front of us. So I seek blessing of that, so that I can speak about Srila Prabhupada very nicely. So we are in this is volume 2, chapter Free to Preach. On 11th of December, we have completed for some portion of this chapter, and later on we are completing further on. Briefly, this chapter describes that previously Srila Prabhupada was in Dr. Mishra's studio. There he was not able to freely preach because he used to conduct classes weekly. For the beginners, daily classes are required and weekly will not help. So Srila Prabhupada was choosing for a place of his own from where he can preach daily. So daily, like temple, we have a temple where people will come daily and listen Bhagavatam and chant, take prasadam and can go. Likewise, Prabhupada was looking for a place where he can hold Bhagavatam courses daily. So later on, he found that room, room number 307. That is mentioned as 307. It is not our room. Fortunately, our room is also 307, ashram. But maybe that parampara is there, 307. So here Bill Epstein is one of the person. There is a place called Hotel Restaurant. That is a restaurant paradox where regular meetings were happening in the city. What is happening new in the city? Everywhere that kind of places will be there, like cinema, some cinema studio places will be there where they can discuss about movies and all, and other places will be there where they can discuss about political. So here this paradox restaurant is there where like-minded people are gathering together and discussing about the happenings in the city, spiritual happenings. So that past few weeks, they were discussing about one person. He came new and is introducing new culture to us. So that was the discussion, hot topic in the city. So they were discussing. So two persons were discussing daily about this person, and he is about Srila Prabhupada. So he was a hot topic of that city, New York City. So they were discussing, and among these two, one is Bill Epstein. So Bill Epstein, quite in contrast to Robert Nelson. Nelson is one of a person who was interested in spiritual activities, and he came and he offered his help. He purchased a tape recorder also for Srila Prabhupada. So, quite in contrast to Robert Nelson, was a dashing romantic person with long, wavy, dark hairs and beard. He was good looking and effervescent, and took upon himself a role of informing people to the restaurant of the city's spiritual news. Once he became interested in the new Swami, he made a Swami ongoing topic of conversation at the restaurant. So, this is a continued discussion. What is happening? What happened yesterday? What is happening today? Any classes? So, that was the topic. Bill. Now he is telling, I went in the back and I was asked Richard, the manager, I am going to take some food to the Swami. You don't mind? Do you? He said, no, take anything you want. So I took some brown rice and other stuff and I brought it up there. I went upstairs and knocked the door and there was no answer. I knocked again and I saw that the light was on because it had a glass panel, and finally he answered. I was really scared because I had never really accepted any teacher. He said, come in, sit down. So he went to Srila Prabhupada. So he took permission from a owner, the paradox manager. He said, okay, whatever you want, to take something to the Swami. So he took some brown rice and other ingredients. So with that ingredients, he came to Srila Prabhupada's room. When he was knocking, no one was there. But light was on. So he knocked once again and some person came. He said, come in. That was Srila Prabhupada. We started talking and he said to me, the first thing that the people do where meet in show each other love. They exchange names. They exchange something to eat. So he gave me a slice of apple and he showed me the tape recorder he had, probably for recording his chants. Then he said, have you ever chanted? I said, no, I haven't chanted before. So he played a chant and then he spoke to me some more. He said, you must come back. I said, well, I will come back. I will bring you some more food. James Greene, a 30 years old carpentry teacher at Cooper Union, was delving into Eastern philosophy. He lived on the same block as the paradox and began hearing about the Swami from Harvey Cohen and Bill Epstein while regularly taking his evening meals at the restaurant. This is one more person, James Greene, who used to live on the same floor of this hotel. So daily he is listening conversation between these two. So now James is telling him, James, it was really Harvey and Bill who got these things going on. I remember one evening at Mishra's in which Swamiji was only a presence but did not speak. Mishra's students seemed more into the bodily aspect of yoga. This seemed to be one of Swami's complaints. His room on 72nd Street was quite small. He was living in a fairly narrow room with a door on the one end. Swamiji would set himself up along one side, and we were rather closely packed. It may have been no more than 80 feet wide, and it was rather dim. He sat on this thin mattress, and then we sat on the floor. We would not chant, we would just come. And he would lecture. There was no direction other than the lecture on the Bhagavad Gita. I had read a lot of literature, and in my own shy way, I was looking for a master. I think I have one aggression in me or getting quality. I was really just a listener, and this seemed right, hearing the Bhagavad Gita. So I kept coming. It just seemed as if things would grow from there. More and more people began coming. Then it got crowded, and he had to find another place. So regularly, many visitors are coming, and the crowd is increasing more and more daily. So that was a very small place. During discourse, they were closely packed. So now more place is required. So they were looking for another place. The new group from the paradox was young and hip. In contrast to the older, more conversation upon uptown, people who had been attending Prabhupada's classes. In those days, it was still unusual to see a person with long hair and beard. And when such people started coming to the Swami's meeting on the west side, some of the older people were alarmed. As one of them noted, Swami Bhaktivedanta began to pick up another kind of people. He picked them up at the Bowery or some attics. And they came with funny hats and grey blankets wrapped around themselves, and they startled me. David Allen, a 21-year-old seeker who came up from the paradox, had just moved to the city, optimistically attracted by what he had read about experimenting with drugs. He saw the old group as a kind of fuss-budget group of older women on the west side, listening to the Swami's lecture. David, David is talking. David, we were not known as hippies then, but it was strange for the people who had originally been attracted to him. It was different for them to relate to this new group. I think most of the teachers from India up to the time had older followers, and sometimes wealthy widows would provide a source of income. But Swamiji changed right away to the younger, poorer group of people. The next thing that happened was that Bill Epstein and others began talking about how it would be better for the Swami to come downtown to the lower east side. Things were really happening down there, and somehow they were not happening uptown. People downtown really needed him. Downtown was right, and it was ripe. There was life down there. There was a lot of energy going around. So Srila Prabhupada was on the uptown. So many things are happening on the downtown. So people are requesting to come downtown. And this ends from here. This ends the chapter free to preach. Another chapter is starting, chapter 6 on the Bowery. I could not understand the difference between the friends and enemies. My friends was shocked to hear that I was moving go to Bowery. But although I passed through many dangers, I never thought that this is danger. Everywhere I thought this is my home. This is one of the sadhu's lakshana. He will see no difference between friends and enemies, like Prahlad Maharaj says. So here Srila Prabhupada, because downtown is more dangerous. So when he was moving, some people warned him that downtown is more dangerous. Be safe there upstairs. But Srila Prabhupada already he saw many dangers in his life. That's why he is telling, I could not understand the difference between friends and enemies. My friends were shocked to hear that I was moving go to Bori. But although I passed through many dangers, I never thought that this is danger. Anywhere I thought this is my home. by Srila Prabhupada in conversation. April 1966, someone broke into room number 307 while Srila Prabhupada was out and stole his typewriter and tape recorder. When Srila Prabhupada returned to the building, the janitor informed him of the theft. An unknown burglar had broken the transform glass, climbed through, taken the valuables, and escaped. As Srila Prabhupada listened, he became convinced that the janitor himself was the culprit. Of course, he could not prove it, so he accepted the loss with disappointment. Some friends offered replacement for his old typewriter and tape recorder. In a letter to India, he described the theft as a loss of more than 100 rupees. It is understood that such crime as has been committed in my room is very common in New York. This is the way of materialistic nature. American people have everything in ample and the workers get around 100 rupees a daily wages. And still, there were thieves for want of character. The social condition is not very good. This is the condition of New York, materialistic life. Here, Prabhupada had told Joseph Forrester, the Such India ticket agent, that he would be returning to India in a couple of months. That was 7 months ago. Now, for the first time since his arrival, Prabhupada had returned to the Such India ticket office in Brooklyn. He talked about the theft of Mr. Forster, who responded with, "Welcome to the club," and told Prabhupada about the recent theft of his own automobile. Such things, he explained, were not unusual for New York City. He told Prabhupada of the dangers of the city and how to avoid thefts and muggings. Prabhupada listened, shaking his head. He told Miss Forster that American young people were misguided and confused. He discussed his plans for returning to India and showed Mr. Forster one of his Bhagavatams. Prabhupada had lost his spirit for living in room number 307. That would prevent the janitor from stealing again. What would prevent the janitor from stealing again? Harvey Cohen and Bill Epstein had advised him to relocate downtown and had assured him of a more interested people among the young people there. It had been an attractive proposal and he began to reconsider it. Then Harvey offered Prabhupada his studio on the Bowery. Harvey had been working as a commercial artist for an medicine Venu advertisement firm where he very recently acquired inheritance and spurred him to move into a loft of a Bowery to pursue his own career as a painter. But he was becoming delusioned with New York. A group of acquainted addicts to heroin had been coming around and taking advantage of his generosity, and his loft had recently been burglared. He decided to leave the city and go to California, but before leaving, he offered his loft for Prabhupada to share with David Allen. These were the two friends, David and Bill. So, Bill was a painter, so he offered his studio to Srila Prabhupada. But same thing is happening everywhere, thefts are there. So that's why he is asking, same to the club. Who lost? There will be a club, right? For everything, there is a club. So he is thinking, come to the club, same club. Who lost many things? You lost this, I lost this. So that is the nature of materialistic life. They were not happy and still something they want. So by seeing this Harvey was all frustrated in the New York City. He was a good man. So he's thinking of relocating himself to California to avoid all these things. So David Allen has heard that Harvey Cohen was moving to San Francisco if he could subtle his air loft. Harvey had not known David very long, but on the night before Harvey was supposed to leave, he coincidentally met David there. Met David 3 different times in 3 different places on a lowest east side. Harvey took this as a sign that he should rent a loft to David, but he specifically speculated that the Swami should move in too. As Prabhupada was preparing to leave his 72nd Street address, an acquaintance, an electrician who worked in the building, came to warn him. The Bowery was no place for a gentleman, he protested. It was the most corrupt place in the world. Prabhupada's things had been stolen from the room number 307, but moving to Bowery was not the answer. Srila Prabhupada's new home, the Bowery, had a long history. In the early 1600, when Manhattan was known as New Amsterdam and was controlled by the Dutch West Indian Company, Peter Minuit, the governor of New Netherlands, staked out the north-south road and was about to call the Bowery because of the number of Boweries or families lay on east side. It was a dusty country road lined with quaint Dutch cottages and bordered by the peach orchards grown in the estate of Peter Stuyvesant. It became part of the high road to Boston and was of strategic importance during the American Revolution as the only land entrance to New York City. In the early 1800s, the Bowery was predominated by German immigrants. Later in the century, it became predominantly Jewish, and generally it became the city's center of theoretical life. However, as a history of low Manhattans describe, after 1870 came the period of a Bowery celebrated degenerations. Fake addiction rooms, saloons specialized in 5 cents whiskey and knockout drops, sensational dim museums, filthy and rat-ridden stale beer dives together with Charles Mist Hority Strongs. So this is the history. So many things are happening. The Bowery, I will never go there anymore, fixed it forever in the nation's consciousness as the place of unspeakable corruption. The reaction of Srila Prabhupada's electrician friend was not unusual. The Bowery is still known all over the world as Skid Row, a place of ruined and homeless alcoholics. Perhaps the uptown electrician had done business in the Bowery and had the seen the derelicts sitting around and passing bottles or lying unconsciousness in a gutters or staggering up to the passengers by and drunkenly dumping into them as ask for money. Most of the Bowery's 7 or 8,000 homeless men slept in lodging houses that required them to vacate their rooms during the day. So morning they have to vacate and night they can come and sleep. So that is happening even everywhere. Drunkards are there everywhere. So having nowhere else to go and nothing else to do, they would loiter on the street, standing silently on a sidewalks, leaning against the wall, or shuffling slowly along, alone or in the groups. In cold weather, they would wear 2 coats and several suits of clothes at once and would sometimes warm themselves around the fire they would keep going in a city garbage cans. At night, those without lodging slept on the sidewalks, doorsteps, and street corners, crawled into discarded boxes, or sprawled side by side next to the bars. Thefts were commonplaces. A man's pickpocketing might be scared 10 or 20 times while he slept. The rats, the rate of hospitalization and death in the Bowery were 5 times higher than the national average. And many of the homeless men bore marks of recent injuries or violences. Prabhupada's loft, 94 Bowery, was 6 blocks south of Houston Street. At Houston, the Bowery derelicts covered in the heavy crosstown traffic. When cars stopped for the light, bums would come up and wash the windshield and ask for money. South of Houston, the first block held mostly restaurant supply stores, lamp stores, travels, and lunch stores. The building were 3 or 4 stories old, narrow, crowded. Tenants their face covered with heavy fire escapes. Traffic on the Bowery ran uptown and downtown. Car parked on both sides of the street and the constant traffic passage tightly. During the business days, working people passed briskly among the slow moving derelicts. Many of the store windows were covered with protective iron gates, but behind the gates the store owners lit their varieties of lamps to attract prosperity wholesale and retail customers. 94 Bowery was just two doors north of Hester Street. The corner was occupied by the spacious Half Moon Tavern, which was uh, frequented most by neighboring good alcoholics. Above the transfer sat the four-story Bowery flap house marked by a neon sign. Palma House, the name of that place, Palma House, which was covered by a protective metal cage. So here everywhere metal coverage is here there because thefts are more, burglary is more. So everywhere it is covered by panels, iron panels. That was common thing everywhere we see. 94 Bowery was a narrow 40-story building. It had long ago been painted grey and bore the usual facing of massive black fire escape. A well-worn black double door. Its glass panels reinforced with chicken wire opened onto the street. The sign above the door read Air, third and fourth, indicating the artistic residents occupied those floors. The first floor of the next building north, 96 Bowery, was used for storage and its front entrance was covered with a rusty iron gate. At 94 Bowery was another tavern, Harold's smaller and dinning than the half moon. Thus, the block consisted of two saloons, a flop house, and two buildings with lofts. In the 1960s, loft living was just beginning in the area of New York City. The city had been permission for painters, musicians, sculptors, and other artists who required more space than available in most apartments to live in building and had been constructed as factories in the 19th century. After these abandoned factories had been fitted with fireproof doors, bathtubs, shower stalls, and heating and an artist could inexpensively use the large space. These were the air lofts. Harvey Cohen's loft on the top floor of 94 Bowery was an open space almost 100 feet long from east to west and 25 feet width. It received a good amount of sunlight on the east, the Bowery side, and it also had windows at the west end, as well as the skylight. The exposed rafts of the ceiling were 20 feet above the floor. Harvey Cohen had used the loft as an art studio, and racks for painting still lined the walls. A kitchen and shower were partitioned off in the northwest corner, and a room divided stood about 15 feet from the Bowery side window. This divider did not run from wall to wall, but was open both sides, and it was several feet short of the ceiling. It was behind this partition that Srila Prabhupada had his personal living area. A bed and a few chairs stood near the window, and Prabhupada's typewriter sat on this metal trunk next to the small table that held the stacks of Bhagavatam manuscripts. His dhotis hung drying on a cloth lines. On the other side of the partition was a dais, about 10 feet wide and 5 feet deep, on which Srila Prabhupada sat down and during his kirtana and lectures. The dais faced west, towards the loft large open space, open except for a couple of rugs and an old-fashioned solid wooden tables on an easel. Harvey's painting of Lord Chaitanya dancing with his associates was there. The loft was a 4 foot walk up, and the only entrance usually heavily bolted was a door in the rear at the west, and from the outside his door opened into a hallway lit only by a red exit light over the door. The hallway led to the right of few steps and into the open area. If a guest entered during the kirtana or a lecture, he would see the Swami about 30 feet from the entrance. Seated on his dais, on other evening, the whole loft would be dark, but for a glow of the red exit light in the next little, sorry, in the little hallway and a soft illuminated radiation from the other side of the partition where Srila Prabhupada was working. Srila Prabhupada lived on the Bowery, sitting under a small light, while hundreds of derelicts also sat under hundreds of naked lights of the same city blocks. He had no more fixed income than the derelicts, nor any greater security of a fixed residence. Yet his consciousness was different. He was translating Srimad Bhagavatam into English, speaking to the whole world through his Bhagavatam purports. His duty, whether on the 14th floor or a riverside drive apartment building or in a corner of the Bowery loft, was to establish Krishna consciousness as the prime necessity for all humanity. He went on with his translation and with the constant vision of Krishna consciousness and Krishna temple in New York City. Because his consciousness was absorbed in Krishna's universal mission, he did not depend on his surroundings for shelter. Home for him was not a matter of bricks and wood, but of taking shelter of Krishna in every circumstances. As Prabhupada was said to his friends uptown, everywhere is my home, whereas without Krishna's shelter, the whole world would be desolated place. Often he would refer to a scriptural statement that people live in three different modes: goodness, passion, and ignorance. Life in the forest is in the mode of goodness, life in the city is in a passion, and life in the degraded place like a liquor shop, a brothel, or a bowery is in the mode of ignorance. But to live in a temple of a Vishnu is to live in the spiritual world, Vaikuntha, which is transcendental to all the three different modes. And this Bowery loft, where Prabhupada was holding his meeting and performing Kirtana, was also transcendental. When he was behind the partition, working in his correct corner before the open pages of Srimad Bhagavatam, that room was a good as his room back at the Radha Dhamodara temple in Vrindavana. News of the Swami's move to the Bowery loft spread, mostly by word of mouth at the Paradox restaurant, and people began to come by in the evening and chant with Swami. The musical kirtans were especially popular on the Bowery. Since the Swami's new congregation consisted mostly of local musicians and artists who responded more to the transcendental music than to the philosophy, every morning he would hold a class on Srimad Bhagavatam attended by David, Allen, Robert Nelson, and then other boys. And occasionally he would teach cooking to whoever was interested. He was usually available for personal talks with any inquiring visitors or with these new roommates. Although Prabhupada and David each had a designated living area in the large loft, the entire place soon became dominated by Prabhupada's preaching activities. Prabhupada and David got on well together, and at first Prabhupada considered David an aspiring disciple. So here I will end this. Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita. So thanks for giving this opportunity to glorify Srila Prabhupada. Any comments to add? Anandmay Prabhu should add something so that we can hear. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Prabhupada ki. Srila Prabhupada.